What if the seat you paid for your place, your right, became a battleground for dignity? What would you do if a quiet decision in a gleaming first-class cabin sparked a reckoning powerful enough to shake an entire airline to its core? On an ordinary morning, Amara Fields, a composed and visionary black CEO, boards a flight expecting nothing more than the peace she's earned. Instead, she finds herself at the center of a silent storm, asked to move for someone else's comfort, faced with polite threats, surrounded by eyes both judging and uncertain. But what happens when the person you try to erase is the very architect of the system you depend on, who gets to decide who belongs? And what does it cost when the rules protect privilege over justice? As power and prejudice collide at 30,000 feet, one woman's quiet refusal will challenge not just a crew, but an industry and the conscience of a nation. Would you have the strength to stay seated? If this story moves you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Let's begin this powerful journey together. The early morning chill lingered even inside the bustling terminal. Amara Fields always felt it in her bones whenever she traveled. A quiet reminder of how much of the world is built to keep people moving, but never really belonging. She held her carry-on tightly as she walked toward the priority boarding line for Atlas Wings Flight 2087, bound for Los Angeles. The overhead screens blinked with the usual blur of destinations. Her own name, Amara L. Fields, shone on the digital boarding pass in her hand. VIP, Seat 1A. A gentle melody played over the speakers. Someone behind her in line was humming along, trying to break the tension of waiting. Amara tucked a loose curl behind her ear and closed her eyes for a brief second, letting the sound of shuffling feet and rolling suitcases fade. She was used to airports, used to being both invisible and watched, always toggling between roles. Today was different, though. Today she was flying to Los Angeles to finalize a game-changing partnership for Equitas Solutions, her company, with a kind of contract that would shift industry standards for years. She felt the familiar surge of nerves and pride mix inside her. So much depended on her ability to stay poised, to represent more than just herself. Amara reached for the silk scarf draped around her neck, the one her late mother had given her for luck. She remembered her daughter's voice that morning, half asleep but firm. Just keep your head high. Mom, they do not know how much you carry. A flight attendant with a clipped ponytail checked her ticket, smiled, and ushered her forward. The jet bridge was always a liminal space, suspended between here and there. But today Amara welcomed it. She glanced around at the sea of faces boarding ahead of her suits. Sneakers, young families, people clutching lattes and laptops, all searching for their place. The first-class cabin of Atlas Wings gleamed. Cream leather seats, polished wood accents, the faintest hint of citrus from the disinfecting wipes. Amara stepped in, shoulders back, pulse steady. For a second, she just stood there, drinking in the hush. This seat was more than comfort. It was a small luxury she allowed herself, a way of reclaiming space in a world that often asked her to shrink. She slid her briefcase under the seat, hung her blazer carefully, and sat down. The window beside her was fogged with condensation, offering nothing but muted city lights and her own reflection. A soft clink of glassware and the gentle murmur of passengers filled the air. Amara scrolled through her phone, replying to an early message from Leah Park, her head of communications. The subject line read simply, "Today's your day." Amara smiled, replying with a single word, "Ready." As she looked up, she noticed a woman in a tailored navy suit striding down the aisle, heels clicking with a rhythm of entitlement. The woman paused in front of Amara's row. She was older, tall, with perfectly styled silver blonde hair and a leather satchel that seemed as sharp as her expression. Evelyn Drake, Amara thought, though they had never spoken. She had seen Evelyn's face in business magazines, always in a headline about high-stakes deals and impossible wins. Amara recognized the look in her eyes, a look that expected the world to yield. The attendant, Rebecca Walsh, followed closely behind, her smile tight as she prepared to offer another round of champagne. Amara turned her gaze back to her hands, feeling the familiar prickle of anticipation. Oh, she tried to settle herself, telling her heart to ignore the sudden pressure in the air. A pair of businessmen across the aisle laughed quietly. Someone in 2D coughed. Amara watched as Rebecca fussed over the settings on the espresso machine. Everything in first class felt practiced, choreographed. She wondered if anyone else in the cabin ever considered how much of this performance was about making people feel secure, important, above the fray. Amara opened her notebook, making a list of questions for the meeting in Los Angeles. She underlined 3 times, "What does real accountability look like?" It was the question that kept her up at night. As the CEO of Equitas Solutions, she had spent years building systems that exposed bias, enforced fairness, and held corporations to ethical standards most people only paid lip service to. But every system, she knew, was only as strong as the people who enforced it. Suddenly, the hush shifted. Evelyn Drake stopped directly in front of Amara, her lips pursed, eyes narrowing. She did not sit, just hovered, as if waiting for a servant to vacate a chair. Amara looked up, calm and composed. "Good morning," she said. Evelyn's smile was razor-thin. "Good morning. I think there is a mistake. This is my seat," Amara replied evenly. "I believe this is 1A. Correct. Yes, that is my seat. I always have 1A on this flight." Evelyn's voice was smooth, but carried an undercurrent of expectation. Rebecca Walsh reappeared at Evelyn's side, attentive. "Is everything all right here?" she asked. "Tone syrupy," Evelyn replied. "It appears there is a mix-up. I'm supposed to have 1A. I fly this route every week." Rebecca looked at Amara, her smile flickering. "May I see your boarding pass?" Ma'am Amara held it out. Steady hand, not a tremor. "Of course. I booked this seat 2 weeks ago." Rebecca's eyes flicked over the ticket, and something in her jaw tightened. "Yes, Ms. Fields. I see you have 1A. There might be a system error. Ms. Drake is one of our long-standing VIP clients." The words hung in the air. Amara felt a tightness in her chest, but her face remained neutral. She said softly, "I am also a VIP client." Rebecca hesitated. Evelyn pressed closer. "I don't mind waiting, but I do expect to be accommodated." A pause stretched between them. The attendant's eyes shifted between the 2 women. Amara noticed the way Rebecca's voice dropped when speaking to her, the slight turn of the body favoring Evelyn. "I'll check with the supervisor," Rebecca said. She turned and moved briskly toward the galley. Evelyn stayed standing, glancing down at Amara as if weighing whether she was worth her time. Amara took a slow breath, returning her attention to the foggy window. She felt the old question rise inside her. Why is my presence always a negotiation? She had worked too hard, come too far, to surrender her seat in silence. But as the minutes passed and the cabin filled, Amara found herself rehearsing what she might say, how she might defend herself, how she might do it without being labeled difficult. Outside, the first rays of sunrise crept across the tarmac, lighting the sky with the promise of a new day. Amara straightened in her seat. She would not move. She would not apologize for being exactly where she belonged. The weight of arrival pressed in from all sides. And so, the stage was set. The murmur in the first-class cabin grew as more passengers settled in. A man with a navy suit adjusted his seatbelt and glanced at Amara, offering a brief, polite nod. She returned it with a smile that felt more like armor than warmth. She could feel Evelyn Drake's presence looming just beside her, the woman's perfume a sharp blend of lily and something metallic. Rebecca Walsh returned, this time with Lucas Barnett, the cabin supervisor. He looked polished in his crisp uniform, hair neatly parted, a gold Atlas wings pin on his lapel. His eyes, however, darted between Amara and Evelyn, reading the room with a subtle tension. "Good morning, ladies," Lucas began, his voice gentle but practiced. "I understand there is some confusion regarding seat assignments. Ms. Fields, may I see your boarding pass? Please." Amara handed it over, her hand steady. She watched as Lucas examined the ticket, then glanced at a digital tablet in his other hand. He took a moment too long, as if looking for a loophole that would let him avoid making a real decision. "Thank you, Ms. Fields. According to our system, yes, you are booked in 1A. However," his eyes flicked to Evelyn, "Ms. Drake is one of our most loyal VIP passengers. She's flown this route every week for years. We try to accommodate our frequent flyers when possible." Amara could feel the familiar heat rising in her chest. She kept her voice even. "I understand. But I also booked this seat in advance, and I am a VIP member as well. I have confirmation and a receipt, if you need to see it." Evelyn sighed audibly, arms folded across her chest. "Lucas, you know how this works. I always have 1A. There must be some mistake. Perhaps Ms. Fields would be willing to take 3A for today. I am sure she will find it just as comfortable." The suggestion hung in the air like a dare. The words stung, not because they were hostile, but because they were so casual. It was not a request. It was an expectation, cloaked in civility. Amara smiled politely, but her eyes were cold. "I am comfortable where I am. Thank you." Rebecca shifted, glancing at Lucas as if for guidance. Lucas's professional facade slipped for just a second. He cleared his throat. "Ms. Fields, we want all our passengers to feel welcome. Would you consider moving to 3A so that everyone is happy before departure? We can offer you an extra amenities package, free lounge access on your return, or a complimentary dinner voucher." Amara's fingers tightened around the armrest. She heard herself think, "This is how it always happens. The request sounds gentle, but the pressure is absolute." She looked at Lucas, then Rebecca, then Evelyn. "No, I am not moving. I selected this seat. I paid for it, and I would like to remain here." Evelyn's jaw flexed. She forced a smile, but her voice hardened. "I suppose some people do not understand tradition." Something inside Amara flared, a sharp twist of pain and anger that she pressed down. She was aware of the other passengers now watching, eyes flickering between the two women. The air was heavy with expectation and discomfort. A moment passed. Lucas looked between the two women again, clearly searching for a way out that would not make anyone upset except maybe Amara. "If you are sure, Ms. Fields, I will make a note of your decision. We may need to escalate this if it becomes an operational issue." Amara inclined her head, voice calm. "I am sure." Rebecca offered a tight, brittle smile. "We will get this sorted before takeoff," She turned to Evelyn, whose lips were pressed into a thin line, and together they walked a few steps down the aisle to confer in low voices. Alone now. Amara let her breath out slowly. She could feel the aftershocks of the encounter in her limbs. She wondered if anyone realized how tiring it was to simply take up space in rooms where you were not expected. She stared at her reflection in the window, searching her own eyes for resolve. Her mind flashed back to a business dinner years ago, a similar scene. A group of executives had debated her credentials right in front of her, as if she was not present. One had even suggested she could sit at the edge of the table, just for now. She had smiled then, too, and stayed seated. Later, alone in her hotel room, she had cried for hours, not because of the words, but because of how ordinary the moment had felt. Now, on this flight, Amara promised herself she would not apologize for being present. She pressed her thumb to the ridge of her boarding pass, grounding herself in the simple fact that she belonged. She caught the eye of a man in 3C, Cameron Brooks. She remembered from boarding, a tall man with warm brown skin and a gentle, observant gaze. He gave her a subtle nod, silent support. Amara nodded back, feeling a wave of gratitude. It was enough. The moments ticked by. The cabin filled with more passengers, some laughing, some scrolling their phones. A young woman in 2D, Sophie Tran, stole a glance at Amara and then looked away quickly, her mouth pressed in a troubled line. Rebecca and Lucas returned. "Miss Fields, we are still waiting for final confirmation from the ground supervisor," Rebecca said. "If you would like, you can enjoy a beverage while we sort this out." Amara accepted a glass of water, her hand steady even as her heart thudded in her chest. She sipped slowly, buying herself time to think. What would happen if she gave in? It would be easier, quieter, but what would she teach her daughter if she did? The thought struck her harder than any insult. She pictured her mother's hand on her shoulder, remembered the way her mother's voice always managed to be gentle and unyielding at once. "Your presence is not a disruption," she used to say. "It is a promise." Rebecca lingered near the galley, glancing over her shoulder as if she could will Amara to vanish by force of will alone. Evelyn paced the front of the cabin, checking her phone, shooting looks Amara's way that held both curiosity and contempt. The tension grew, unseen but undeniable. Amara felt it in the stiffness of her neck, the way every muscle wanted to coil and retreat. Instead, she sat taller, straightened her scarf, and waited. She was not leaving, not today. The lights in the cabin dimmed as boarding neared completion. Lucas approached one last time. "Ms. Fields, I hope you understand we are doing everything we can to make your journey pleasant. Please be patient while we resolve this." "I am," Amara replied quietly. "I am exactly where I need to be." Rebecca's radio crackled. She stepped away, murmuring into it. Evelyn, now seated on the arm of a vacant seat, shot one last icy glance at Amara. In that suspended moment, Amara realized something else. She was tired of choosing between peace and dignity. Maybe, finally, she would choose both. Outside the window, the airport began to wake, the first blush of sunlight brightening the runway. But inside 1A, the real day had already begun. As the final passengers found their seats, the atmosphere in first class felt as tight as a sealed jar. Amara Fields sat still, shoulders straight, hands folded neatly on her lap. She could hear the muted conversations and the clinking of cups, but beneath it all ran a quiet current of anticipation. Every few moments, someone glanced her way. quickly looking down if their eyes met hers. She wondered if they sensed the tension or simply mistook it for the usual awkwardness of air travel. She wondered if they saw the battle already taking shape around her seat. Across the aisle, Evelyn Drake remained perched on the arm of an empty seat. Her expression was composed, but her posture radiated impatience. She scrolled through her phone, pausing now and then to glare at Amara. Rebecca Walsh and Lucas Barnett stood near the galley, whispering and consulting the glowing screen of the supervisor's tablet. Every so often, Rebecca's gaze drifted to Amara, then flicked away as if burned by the eye contact. A few rows behind, Cameron Brooks watched the situation with a quiet intensity. He tapped his fingers against the armrest, his expression troubled. It was the kind of look Amara recognized from years of attending board meetings and community gatherings, the look of someone wrestling with the decision to speak or to stay silent. Lucas approached again, this time with a deeper crease in his brow. "Ms. Fields, I apologize for the inconvenience. We're still working to resolve this. We just want all our guests to feel valued. If you'd agree to move to 3A, we can ensure you receive additional rewards for your loyalty." Amara met his gaze. "Mr. Barnett, I appreciate the offer, but I will not be changing seats. I reserved 1A, paid for 1A, and my ticket is clear." Lucas hesitated. "I understand. However, we are in a delicate position. Ms. Drake is an extremely important client for Atlas Wings. She has status with our executive program. We hope to avoid any negative experience for our frequent flyers." Amara heard the coded message. She had heard it in hotels, at conference tables, at the doors of opportunity. Be pleasant, be quiet, and maybe you will be allowed to stay. She smiled politely, her words measured. "I, too, am a frequent flyer, and I have every right to this seat. I will not be moving." Evelyn stood now, stepping closer. Her voice dropped to a level only Amara and Lucas could hear. "I do not want a scene, but I think we both know how this should be handled. I always sit here. It is tradition, and tradition matters in this world. I am sure Miss Fields would be happier in 3A. Amara looked up, her eyes steady. "I am happy exactly where I am. Thank you." Evelyn's lips pressed into a hard line. She turned to Lucas. "I expect this to be resolved." Lucas flustered, gave a tight nod, and retreated. Rebecca lingered for a moment, uncertainty on her face. She tried to muster a smile, but it faltered. "We will do everything we can to make this right." "Ms. Fields," she murmured, before following Lucas. Amara sat back, the pressure in her chest now a dull ache. She watched the blur of ground crew outside the window, their neon vests flashing against the gray dawn. For a moment she let herself drift, recalling the feeling of her mother's arms around her as a child after a hard day at school, the reassurance that her worth was never up for negotiation. She pressed her phone to her knee, thumb hovering over the record button. She hesitated. Would recording this make her seem confrontational, or would it simply protect her truth if things escalated? She remembered a recent news story. Another black professional asked to move from first class, their voice erased by a policy meant to keep things pleasant. She thought of her daughter, the lessons she wanted to teach, and the world she wanted to help shape. With a quiet resolve, Amara tapped the record button, setting her phone screen face up on her lap. The tiny red light glowed in the dim cabin, a silent witness to whatever would come next. The cabin grew restless. A businessman in 4A, Henry Lowell, glanced at Amara's phone and then at her face. His curiosity open but cautious. Sophie Tran in 2D watched through the corner of her eye. fingers nervously twisting her hair. Cameron Brooks finally spoke, his voice soft but carrying. "Excuse me, Ms. Walsh, Mr. Barnett, may I say something?" Rebecca and Lucas turned, surprised. "Of course, sir," Lucas replied, guarded. Cameron shifted in his seat. "I have been flying this route almost as long as Ms. Drake. I have seen how things play out in this cabin. I have watched people like Ms. Fields, people like me asked to move, to be flexible, to accommodate tradition. But she is not doing anything wrong. She booked this seat. She has her card. Why should she have to move?" A ripple passed through the passengers. Rebecca's mouth opened, then closed again. Lucas looked lost for words. Evelyn bristled, eyes flashing with irritation. Amara felt her heart swell with a complicated mix of gratitude and embarrassment. She nodded to Cameron, her lips parting in a silent thank you. Lucas forced a professional tone. "Thank you, sir. We are doing our best to manage a difficult situation," Cameron replied. "Sometimes the right thing is simple, even if it is uncomfortable." There was a heaviness in the air now, a shared knowledge that something deeper than a seat assignment was at stake. The entire first-class cabin seemed to be holding its breath. Evelyn leaned toward Amara, her words barely audible. "You do not understand how things work here. Some of us have earned our place." Amara looked at her, her gaze unwavering. "I have earned my place, too. I am not moving." Rebecca's radio crackled. She turned away, muttering into the headset. Lucas hovered, unsure whether to push harder or to let the moment settle. Amara sat taller. The ache in her chest remained, but it was joined by a flame of resolve. She had spent a lifetime deciding when to shrink and when to stand. Today, she was done shrinking. She whispered to herself, "I belong here. I belong here." The lights flickered as the crew prepared for takeoff. Amara's phone continued to record, unnoticed by most, but a silent guardian. Whatever happened next, she would not be erased. A hush hung over the cabin as Rebecca Walsh moved briskly down the aisle, her heels barely making a sound on the plush carpet. She wore the practiced smile of someone trained to smooth over anything, but her eyes betrayed the pressure building beneath the surface. Lucas Barnett followed, consulting his tablet as if hoping for a solution to magically appear on the glowing screen. The row of first class felt like the eye of a gathering storm. Amara Fields tried to focus on the gentle vibration of the jet's engines outside, the rising sun beginning to pierce the gray clouds. She pressed her palm against the armrest, steadying herself, determined not to let the tension show. She could sense every eye watching her now, waiting to see if she would fold or hold her ground. Evelyn Drake's voice cut through the silence, cool and pointed. "Lucas, this is becoming quite the spectacle. It's making your premium cabin feel very unpremium." Lucas nodded apologetically, stepping forward. "We understand your concern, Ms. Drake. We are working to resolve the issue as quickly as possible." Amara caught the faint smirk on Evelyn's lips. She wondered if this scene was just another episode in Evelyn's endless show of social dominance. The thought made her jaw tighten. Lucas faced Amara, his voice softer but no less insistent. "Ms. Fields, I would like to remind you that the crew has the authority to reassign seats as needed to maintain order. We do not want to escalate, but we must ask again if you would consider moving." Amara heard the careful wording, the professional math barely hiding the push beneath. Her mind raced with memories of being asked to move, to yield, to adjust. She remembered her first year at university, sitting in a seminar where her name was mispronounced every single class, until she finally corrected the professor. Even then, she had worried she would be called difficult for simply asking for respect. She met Lucas's gaze. "I am not causing a disruption. I am sitting in my assigned seat, prepared to follow all flight policies. If you need confirmation of my ticket or my status, I have everything documented." A flicker of uncertainty flashed across Lucas's face, but before he could respond, Rebecca leaned in. "We are just trying to make sure everyone is comfortable. Miss Fields, there's no need for all this tension." Amara wanted to laugh at the irony. She wondered what comfort meant when it always came at her expense. She glanced at her phone, the recording still running. Its presence felt like a shield, both for her and for the truth. Cameron Brooks, still in 3C, cleared his throat. "Excuse me. I do not think Ms. Fields is the one causing the tension here." His words hung in the air, heavier than the silence that followed. Rebecca shifted uneasily. Lucas bristled, but instead of responding, he reached for his radio. "I am going to check with Captain Ruiz," he announced, his tone formal. "Please remain in your seats." He disappeared toward the cockpit, leaving Rebecca to manage the fallout. She busied herself with trivial tasks, fluffing pillows, refilling water, anything to avoid the eyes now turned on her. Evelyn, undeterred, slid into the empty seat across from Amar and crossed her legs. "You know, this could all be so much easier if you just agreed to move." "Is it really worth all this fuss for a seat?" Amara kept her eyes forward. "It is not about the seat. It is about what the seat represents." Evelyn's laugh was soft and dismissive. "Oh, you people always make things about symbolism. Some of us just want to get where we are going, without the drama." Amara felt the sting, but she would not let it show. Maybe some of us are tired of the drama always being on us. Their words settled into the space between them. Evelyn looked away, her expression closing like a door. At that moment, the cabin doors closed with a gentle thud. The safety video began to play on the screens, a soothing voice instructing passengers on seat belts and life vests as if nothing out of the ordinary was happening. Rebecca approached again, now less composed, her voice just above a whisper. "Ms. Fields, we need a decision. The captain will be here shortly. If you refuse to comply with the request to move, it may be considered non-compliance with crew instructions." Amara's heart pounded in her chest. She felt the weight of every time she had chosen silence over standing up for herself. She heard her mother's voice in her memory. "Dignity is not something you beg for. It is something you claim." She wanted to cry, to scream, to disappear. Instead, she straightened her back and said clearly, "I am not moving." Rebecca pressed her lips together, then hurried away, radio in hand. The quiet that followed was not peaceful. It was the kind of quiet that comes before thunder. Sophie Tran in 2D leaned over to her companion and whispered, "This is wrong." "She booked that seat. Why are they pressing her?" Her companion nodded, concern etched into his brow. A buzz of unease spread through the cabin. Passengers shifted in their seats, uncertain. A few began recording on their phones, holding the devices low but visible. Henry Lowell in 4A made a show of adjusting his glasses, peering over them at the unfolding drama. After a few minutes, Lucas returned, accompanied by Captain Alejandro Ruiz. The captain's presence brought a new weight to the situation. He was tall, calm, with a weathered face that spoke of decades in the air. He glanced around, taking in the tension. "Good morning, everyone," Captain Ruiz began. his voice smooth but serious. "I understand there has been an issue with seating assignments. I want to make sure we resolve this respectfully. Ms. Fields, could you please explain what happened?" Amara looked up at him, her eyes tired but unafraid. "I booked 1A. I checked in as instructed, and I have my boarding pass. I have been asked to move, but I see no reason why I should. I am following all policies." The captain listened carefully. He turned to Evelyn, who explained, "I have always sat here. There has never been a problem before." Captain Ruiz nodded slowly. "I appreciate both of your perspectives. However, the crew does have the right to manage seating for operational needs. Miss Fields, if you do not comply, I will have to consider this noncompliance." The word stung. Amara felt a flicker of fear, but also something stronger, a refusal to vanish. She took a breath. "Captain, I am in my assigned seat. I am not being disruptive. I would like to stay." Captain Ruiz met her gaze. Something unspoken passed between them, a moment's hesitation. He turned to Lucas. "We will give you a few more minutes to decide." As the captain stepped away, Amara gripped the armrest, her hands trembling now. She felt the pressure mounting, the air thinning around her. She had never wanted to be the center of a scene, but she was done being erased. She looked around at the passengers, saw the support and the uncertainty. She thought, "I am not just standing up for me. I am standing up for all the times no one stood up at all." Thin air, she realized, is not just what you breathe at altitude. It is what you feel when the world tries to make you smaller. She was not going to let that happen. Not today. Captain Alejandro Ruiz's calm voice echoed in Amara's mind as he and Lucas retreated to the galley, leaving her with nothing but the low hum of the engines and the tight scrutiny of the first-class cabin. Amara Fields felt the stares, sharp and searching, as if every passenger was waiting for her next move. She shifted in her seat, straightened her scarf, and tried to focus on the simple rhythm of her breath. Evelyn Drake now sat across the aisle in an empty seat, chin lifted, eyes narrowed with icy calculation. She scrolled on her phone with long, deliberate movements, pausing just enough to let Amara know she was being watched. Every so often, Evelyn whispered to Rebecca, who hovered nearby, her smile now brittle and forced. Rebecca approached again, her voice just above a whisper. "Ms. Fields, we have a very tight schedule today. The crew and passengers are waiting on a resolution. If you do not agree to move, the captain will have no choice but to involve security." Amara met Rebecca's eyes, seeing not malice but a weariness, perhaps even regret. Still, the pressure was clear. "I am not moving," Amara answered quietly. "I am not doing anything wrong. I am following every rule." Rebecca hesitated, biting her lip. Then she glanced over her shoulder toward Lucas and the captain, both deep in conversation. A murmur rippled from the rows behind. Henry Lowell in 4A cleared his throat, then raised his voice just enough for all to hear. "If a passenger booked the seat and has the boarding pass, why is this so complicated?" He looked directly at Rebecca. "I fly Atlas wings twice a month. I have never seen a situation like this." The words seemed to loosen something in the air. Other passengers shifted, glanced up from their tablets and magazines. Sophie Tran in 2D turned to her companion, her voice low but firm. "It feels wrong, doesn't it? She has the ticket. That should be the end of it." Evelyn's eyes flashed with annoyance. She sat upright. Giving Henry a look meant to silence, but the older man simply shrugged and returned to his crossword. Amara's phone continued to record, screen still glowing gently on her lap. She wondered if anyone would ever see this video. Would anyone believe her side if things went wrong? Or would it vanish into a void? Another story too inconvenient to make the news. For a moment, she fought a wave of doubt. What if this was the time her calm failed? What if her courage turned to anger in front of all these strangers? She closed her eyes and steadied herself. In her mind, she pictured her daughter's face, hopeful and determined, and the words she'd whispered that morning. Don't shrink. Mom, make space. Rebecca retreated once more, disappearing to consult with Lucas and the captain. The tension returned, thick as a thundercloud. Amara's thoughts swirled. She remembered a story her father used to tell her about the first black airline captain in the country. He would say, "It took courage to fly, but it took more courage to keep your seat when they told you it wasn't yours." She wondered if he ever felt alone in a crowd, with all eyes waiting for him to break. Just then, a quiet but steady voice rang out from 3C. "Excuse me," said Cameron Brooks, rising from his seat. "I would like to say something, if I may." All heads turned. Rebecca paused, uncertain. Cameron stood tall, shoulders back, his presence suddenly commanding. "I have been flying Atlas wings for over a decade. I have seen this happen before. I have been in Ms. Fields's position. It always starts polite and ends with someone like me or her losing something we have paid for. We ask for respect and are told to be flexible. We ask for dignity and are told not to make a scene." He paused, letting his words settle. "I am recording, too," Cameron said, holding up his phone. "So is half the cabin. If anyone needs a witness statement, I am happy to give one. Ms. Fields has not done anything wrong." A few people murmured in agreement. One young woman near the back began typing furiously on her phone. The energy in the cabin shifted. Amara felt it, her aloneness shrinking, replaced by the first flickers of support. Evelyn Drake gave Cameron a look of pure disdain. "Is it really necessary to involve everyone in your crusade?" she asked, voice dripping with condescension. Cameron smiled, gentle but unyielding. "Maybe it is time everyone was involved. Maybe that is the only way it changes." Lucas stepped forward, trying to regain control. "We need to keep the cabin calm. Please remain in your seats and allow the crew to manage this issue." But the audience was no longer silent. Another passenger, an older woman in the third row, said quietly, "We are watching. That's all." Her words were simple, but the message was clear. Amara felt a tear threaten at the corner of her eye. She blinked it away, inhaling deeply. The resolve in her chest grew. For years, she had taught her team at Equitas Solutions that systems fail when people stop caring, when they let small injustices slip by because it is easier. Now she was living her own lesson. Rebecca returned, face pale, voice almost trembling. "Ms. Fields, the captain will be making a final decision shortly. He asks that you prepare your belongings in case you are asked to deplane." Amara nodded once, then picked up her phone, looked at the lens, and spoke softly for her own record. "I am being asked to leave my assigned seat, despite having every right to be here. I am not being disruptive. I am just refusing to surrender my dignity for someone else's comfort." She placed the phone in her lap and waited. A sudden, heavy silence fell as Captain Ruiz reappeared, this time with 2 airport security officers at his side. The entire cabin seemed to brace itself, breaths held, hearts pounding. The stakes were clear now, for everyone. Captain Ruiz's voice was regretful but firm. "Ms. Fields, You are not in violation of any policy. However, in the interest of operational efficiency, I am instructing you to move to 3A. If you refuse, I will have to ask you to deplane." Amara looked up, her face a mask of quiet pain and dignity. "Captain, I will not move." The officer stepped forward. Captain Ruiz gave a final nod. "Then I have no choice. You will have to leave the aircraft." As the officers gently but firmly guided Amara from her seat, the cabin filled with a mixture of outrage and disbelief. Sophie Tran filmed with trembling hands. Cameron Brooks called out, "We are with you, Ms. Fields." Even Henry Lowell put down his paper and muttered, "This is a disgrace." As Amara walked down the aisle, she felt the eyes of the entire cabin on her. For the first time, she did not feel alone. The unseen audience was watching, and maybe, just maybe, the world outside would see too. For a moment, time seemed to freeze as Amara Fields rose from seat 1A, her every movement under the microscope of dozens of eyes. The hush in the first-class cabin was broken only by the muffled voice from the gate, announcing another flight's departure, far away and irrelevant. Here. The world had shrunk to this narrow aisle, this difficult walk, and the witnesses lining her path. As she collected her briefcase and scarf, Amara forced herself to move slowly and deliberately. She would not give anyone the satisfaction of seeing her rush. Her heart hammered, but her hands stayed steady. She passed Rebecca Walsh and Lucas Barnett, both avoiding her gaze. She caught a glimpse of Evelyn Drake, who sat back now, lips pursed in triumph, but her fingers gripped her phone with a nervous energy that betrayed her. Cameron Brooks met Amara's eyes and nodded, offering a quiet strength. "I will send you my footage," he whispered as she passed. "We will make sure your story is heard." Other passengers murmured support. Sophie Tran looked up, her eyes wet. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "You deserve better." Henry Lowell offered a firm nod. The passengers' solidarity comforted Amara more than she expected. She was not walking out in shame. She was walking out as a witness to something that needed to be seen. At the threshold of the cabin, Amara stopped and turned. For a split second, she faced the entire first-class cabin. "I hope none of you are ever made to feel that your place is up for debate," she said, her voice soft but clear. "We all deserve to be treated with dignity." There was no anger in her words, only a deep, echoing sadness. Rebecca's voice trembled as she tried to regain the thread of normalcy. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the inconvenience. We will be departing shortly." But nothing was normal. Everyone knew it. The emotional current that ran through the cabin would not fade with a standard announcement. Amara was escorted into the jet bridge, the sound of the heavy aircraft door closing behind her. The security officer's touch was gentle but final. They offered her a seat in the empty waiting area, where she sat for a long moment, letting the reality settle over her like a weighted blanket. She stared at her hands. They were shaking now. She pressed her palms together, grounding herself in the memory of her mother's advice. Sometimes you must lose a battle to show the world where the war really is. Amara blinked away sudden tears, determined not to let this moment define her. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone, watching the video play back. Her voice, her composure, her truth, all there, undeniable. A few minutes later, her phone vibrated with a message from Leah Park, her head of communications. "Leah Amara, are you safe? I'm hearing from a contact at Atlas Wings that something happened. What do you need, Amara?" They removed me from 1A for not yielding to a preferred passenger. I have video. Cameron Brooks and at least 4 others recorded everything. Leah, I'm on it. Don't say anything to press yet. Michael and Jada are already assembling legal and PR. Are you okay, Amara? I will be. Let's make sure this doesn't happen again. Amara felt her resolve settle into something hard and unmovable. This was no longer just about her seat. This was about every person who had ever been told, politely or not, that they did not belong in a space they had earned. The gate agent approached, offering a sympathetic look. Ms. Fields, we can book you on the next available flight or arrange a private room while you wait. Is there anything I can get you? Amara shook her head, managing a faint smile. Thank you. I just need a moment. When the agent walked away, Amara scrolled through her contacts, selecting Jada Matthews, her closest friend and Equidace's CTO. The call connected with a soft beep. Jada, Amara said, her voice raw. It happened. They asked me to move, and when I refused, they called security. I have video. Jada's voice was instantly fierce. Send me everything. We will handle this. You did nothing wrong. Are you alone? I am. Leah and Michael are already moving on the legal and PR side. I need you to know I am not hurt. Not in the way they hoped. I am angry, Jada, but I am more resolved than ever. Jada was silent for a moment. Then, you have us. You have a whole team. This is not going to disappear quietly. Not with Equidace on your side. Amara managed a small, grateful laugh. That's the plan. I need to do something with this pain. As she ended the call, she looked through her inbox, already filling with notifications and a couple of early media inquiries. She ignored them for now. Instead, she opened a blank email, addressed it to Leah, Michael, and Jada. Subject: Next Steps Body. I was removed from my seat. I have clear video. Cameron Brooks and other witnesses are willing to speak. I want to take this public, but I want to do it right. Please begin preparing an official statement. No outrage, no dramatics, just truth. This is not just my fight. I want to talk about the system, about power and bias, about how small moments add up. Let's turn this into something bigger than a single flight. She hit send. The airport around her bustled, oblivious to the storm brewing inside the terminal. But Amara felt strangely calm now. She had done what was right, even though it had cost her. She had not surrendered her dignity. She had chosen to stand, and in doing so, she had made herself visible in a way that no one could ignore. Her phone pinged again. Cameron Brooks had already sent his video footage, along with a simple note, "We are with you." Amara closed her eyes and took a deep breath. This was not the ending. It was only the beginning. As Amara Fields sat in the quiet waiting area beyond the jet bridge, the world outside the windows was coming to life. Planes rumbled down runways. Shuttles beeped as they ferried new passengers, and airport workers moved briskly through their morning rituals. Inside Amara, though, a different storm was gathering, one born of humiliation and resolve. Her phone did not stop buzzing. Dozens of messages poured in, some from colleagues at Equidace Solutions, some from friends and contacts who had already heard whispers of what happened. News traveled fast in the digital age, and Amara's story was beginning to move beyond the boundaries of Gate C-27. A notification caught her eye. Leah Park, ever efficient, had already begun to mobilize. Leah's message was short, but loaded with action. Leah Legal is pulling contract clauses now. PR is preparing a holding statement. Do you want to record a personal message for internal use? The board is already asking if this could impact our Atlas Wings partnership. Amara read the message twice, then typed back with steady fingers. Amara, yes. Let's get ahead of it. But I want the tone to be focused on systems, not just on me. This is bigger than one person or one seat. Leah, understood. We're gathering witness accounts. Cameron Brooks's video is powerful. Dozens of people in the cabin are already commenting on social media. Amara took a deep breath. The urge to retreat, to hide from the public eye, was strong. She could imagine how easily the story could become just another headline. Black CEO ejected from her seat. Airline apologizes. Cycle repeats. But there was another part of her, the part that had built Equitas from scratch, the part her daughter believed in. That part would not let her hide. Instead, Amara scrolled through her phone and pressed record on a short video. Her voice was steady, her expression calm. I was removed from my assigned seat this morning. I was told it was for operational reasons, but the truth is, I was asked to move to accommodate another passenger's preference. This is not the first time it's happened to someone who looks like me. It happens quietly, politely, until you notice the pattern. I am not angry for myself. I am determined that this story will mean something. Dignity should not be up for negotiation. She sent the video to Leah, then stood and gathered her things. The day could not wait for her to process her anger. There was work to be done. Meanwhile, on board Flight 2087, the fallout was immediate. Passengers murmured in disbelief. Some demanded answers from Rebecca Walsh, whose face had gone pale. Evelyn Drake stretched out in seat 1A. But there was no victory in her posture, now only a wary alertness, as if waiting for some blowback she could not control. Cameron Brooks stayed on the plane, quietly organizing other passengers who had recorded the incident. He reached out to Sophie Tran and Henry Lowell, exchanging emails and notes, encouraging them to save their videos. This is about more than a seat, he told them quietly. We cannot let this slip by. Atlas Wings ground staff scrambled behind the scenes. Lucas Barnett stood in a break room, wringing his hands, replaying the scene in his mind. Rebecca tried to call her supervisor at headquarters, her voice trembling as she left a message. We have a situation. It was all recorded. I am worried this will go viral. At the Atlas Wings Operations Center in Chicago, a young analyst named Brianna flagged the first trending posts. We have a problem, she whispered to her manager, forwarding a string of videos and angry tweets. Within minutes, the airline's crisis team was on a video call. Their faces were tired, tense, some still in early morning sweatshirts, others already in suits. At the center of it all was Richard Carter, the Atlas Wings CEO. He listened in silence as a senior counsel described the incident. Sir, the passenger removed is Amara Fields. Yes, that Amara Fields. She is the founder of Equitas Solutions. She has a significant contract with us for our compliance software. The color drained from Richard's face. He understood instantly what this meant. She builds the tech that keeps our policies ethical, he said slowly. She will have documented everything. A PR manager jumped in. We are already trending. Atlas Wingsgate is picking up. Videos are being shared. And Sir passengers are calling out the bias directly. This is not going to stay quiet. Richard pinched the bridge of his nose. Get me her contact info. I want a direct call to her office in the next 10 minutes. We need a statement ready. And I want to know who authorized her removal. In the terminal. Amara's phone rang again. This time it was Michael Avery, her general counsel. Michael's tone was brisk but caring. "Amara, we are reviewing our partnership agreement. There is a clause that allows us to trigger an ethics audit in case of any discrimination or policy breach involving our personnel. If you want to use it, we can launch a full review." Amara considered this. Her instinct was not to punish, but to push for change. "Let's prepare the audit paperwork. Michael, I want to do this by the book. No threats, just accountability. I want Atlas Wings to feel the consequences of their choices." Michael agreed. "Leah will coordinate the statements and witness lists." "We are here for you." "And Amara, don't let them make you question your worth. You did the right thing." After ending the call, Amara sat in the stillness, letting the weight of it all settle in her chest. She closed her eyes, picturing her daughter's drawing pinned to the refrigerator back home, a simple crayon sketch of the two of them, holding hands, smiling. She thought about what kind of world she wanted that little girl to grow up in. Her phone vibrated once more. It was a text from Cameron Brooks, a photo attached. It showed Amara from behind as she walked down the aisle. The heads of the other passengers turned toward her in support, their expressions somber but awake. The message was simple: you are not alone. At that moment, Amara knew the story was no longer just hers. The storm had broken, and now the world was watching. By the time Amara Fields left the waiting area, her story was already moving far beyond the airport. Social media posts, many with shaky phone videos, began to circulate, each with the same theme: a woman of quiet strength, calmly refusing to be displaced, and a flight crew's refusal to see her worth. Outside, the morning sunlight had grown stronger. Amara made her way to a quiet corner near a window overlooking the runways. Planes lifted into the sky every few minutes, silver bodies glinting as if mocking the grounded feeling inside her. She thought of her mother again, that lesson repeated in childhood. Sometimes justice begins with one small act, even if you are the only one standing. Her phone vibrated. Leah Park had forwarded her a screenshot. The hashtag Justice for Amara was trending in 3 cities. News outlets were beginning to pick up the story. Short articles with headlines like "Black CEO removed from VIP seat for refusing to move" and "Atlas Wings faces social media firestorm" were multiplying by the hour. Amara sat down, watching the news unfold in real time, both dazed and oddly detached. For years, she had advocated for accountability through her company's compliance systems. She had trained executives on the importance of inclusion, had crafted policies to protect the vulnerable, but she had not expected to become a test case for her own ideals. The irony was both sharp and sobering. Her phone rang again. This time, it was Richard Carter, CEO of Atlas Wings. Amara hesitated, then answered with a measured tone. "This is Amara." Richard's voice was tight, urgent, but not unkind. "Ms. Fields, I want to personally apologize for what happened today. I have just learned the full details, and I am deeply troubled. This is not who we are, or who we want to be." Amara listened. She heard remorse, but also fear. Fear of public backlash, of contracts lost, of the narrative escaping his control. "Thank you, Mr. Carter," Amara replied, "but apologies are only as meaningful as the actions that follow. I have my own video and witness accounts. My team is preparing a formal ethics audit under our partnership agreement. I hope you will cooperate fully." Richard paused. "Of course, we will do whatever is needed. Please, can we resolve this without further escalation?" Amara closed her eyes, remembering every moment she had told another leader that change was possible, but only with truth. That depends on what you do next. I will not let this be minimized. I want to see real accountability, and I want every passenger and crew member to know this is about more than a single seat. It is about every policy and every person who is made to feel small. Richard sounded chastened. Understood. Please send me your team's statement. I will gather my executives and respond within the hour. After the call. Amara exhaled slowly, feeling her own boundaries hardening. She would not accept vague promises or quiet settlements. She was resolved, but also vulnerable. In the past, these moments would have left her shaken for days. But this time, she felt buoyed by something new: community, a rising tide of voices echoing her own. A message arrived from Jada Matthews. Amara opened it, feeling relief at her friend's steady presence. Jada, we are with you. I have lawyers, data analysts, and comms on standby. Cameron is gathering other witnesses. Leah is preparing a press kit. Do you want to be in the first video statement, Amara? Yes, but only if we focus on solutions. I don't want this to be about outrage alone. Jada, that is what makes you a leader. We'll draft something together. Rest a moment if you can. For the first time all morning, Amara let herself relax into the chair, gazing at the runways, imagining her daughter at home, already hearing about the story from a classmate's parent. Amara's heart ached at the idea of her daughter learning about the world's unfairness in real time. But she also felt proud that her child would see a model of dignity and refusal to surrender. Another ping this time, from Michael Avery. Michael, the audit clause is triggered. Our team is authorized to review all relevant Atlas Wings data ticketing, passenger complaints, loyalty assignments, incident logs. If there is a pattern, we'll find it. Amara. Thank you. Michael. Please work with Leah on the public statement. I want the tone to be honest, clear, and firm. No anger, just truth. As the hours passed, Amara watched the story spread. Passengers from her flight began posting their own accounts. Sophie Tran described the moment she realized Amara was being pressured. Henry Lowell wrote a short, dignified post about what he witnessed. Cameron Brooks's video was shared widely, his calm narration highlighting the quiet unfairness of what everyone saw. Support poured in from unexpected places, from young professionals who saw themselves in Amara's resolve, from older travelers who admitted they had stayed silent in similar moments, from allies who wrote that they would do better next time. Amara's inbox filled with hundreds of messages. Some were from other CEOs, congratulating her on her poise. Others were from strangers who had never set foot in first class but felt the sting of exclusion just as sharply. Atlas Wings, meanwhile, was struggling to regain control. Their initial statement, bland and vague, only made things worse. Social media erupted in anger. Commentators called for firings, policy changes, boycotts. The company's stock dipped as analysts debated the potential fallout from the Equitas Solutions contract. Inside her, Amara wrestled with a sense of both vindication and fatigue. She had always known that standing up came with a price, but she had never expected her own story would become the spark for a movement. As the sun moved higher in the sky, Amara took a final deep breath and stood, shoulders squared. She would not be defined by one flight or one loss. She had work to do, a new altitude to reach, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been told their worth was conditional. Before she left the terminal, Amara replied to Leah and Jada, "Amara, I'm ready. Let's raise the standard." And with that, she stepped back into the world, no longer just a passenger, but a catalyst for change. The world spun quickly once Amara Fields left the terminal. What started as a confrontation in the quiet Climate-controlled luxury of first class was now breaking into headlines, news alerts, and hashtags. Videos filmed by Cameron Brooks, Sophie Tran, and others had been stitched together, shared, and analyzed by thousands of strangers before Amara had even finished her coffee. In the rideshare car back to her hotel, Amara watched the story escalate in real time. She scrolled through news updates as her driver hummed to soft jazz on the radio, oblivious to the digital storm swirling around his passenger. Atlas Wings, sensing the firestorm, rushed to push out a second statement, a carefully worded apology, this time mentioning Amara by name and promising a thorough internal review. But it was too late. The public was no longer interested in corporate apologies. People wanted change, and in conference rooms across the country, airline executives began to feel a new kind of turbulence. By noon, Amara's face was on national television. News anchors replayed the moment she was asked to move, debated the words of Captain Alejandro Ruiz, and highlighted Cameron Brooks' steady voice. "We cannot let this slip by." Panelists weighed in on issues of privilege, policy, and dignity, and the story resonated far beyond airports. Meanwhile, inside the Atlas Wings headquarters, the boardroom was in chaos. Richard Carter, the CEO, listened to one urgent update after another. His phone lit up with texts from investors, legal counsel, and the company's public relations chief. "This isn't just a customer complaint," warned the head of HR. "This is a threat to our entire brand." In the midst of the commotion, Richard received an email from Leah Park, head of communications for Equitas Solutions. The subject line was short and pointed: request for immediate action ethics audit, Atlas Wings. Richard read the email twice. It was calm, direct, and utterly without negotiation. Equitas was invoking their contract's audit clause. The email listed a clear timeline: immediate access to all data related to loyalty program assignments, staff incident reports, ticketing anomalies, and passenger complaints. There was no room for stalling. Back in her hotel room, Amara met with her core team over a video call. Leah Park, Michael Avery, and Jada Matthews appeared on her laptop screen, their faces focused and determined. Leah spoke first. "We've already received a dozen media inquiries asking for your statement." Amara, the ethics audit announcement is spreading. Analysts are saying it could set a precedent for the entire industry. "Are you ready to go public?" Amara nodded. Her heart was heavy, but her mind was sharp. "Yes, but our message must be about structure, not just personal pain. We need to show how policy enables bias and how accountability can reset the standard. I don't want this to be about me alone." Michael Avery, legal as always, leaned forward. "The audit will uncover patterns if they exist. We'll request interviews with Atlas Wings employees and review their conflict training protocols. If we find systemic issues, we go straight to the board, then public. If not, we still demand new safeguards." Jada smiled gently. "You're leading by example. Amara, we'll stand with you, every step." As the meeting ended, Amara looked out the window at the city below. She let herself feel the fatigue, the vulnerability, the doubts. What if nothing changed? What if her name became just another headline, brave, poised, and soon forgotten? She pressed her forehead to the glass and whispered, "Not this time." Just then, her phone chimed with a message from Cameron Brooks. It was a screenshot of a message thread, other passengers from the flight agreeing to speak publicly, to join a group statement supporting Amara's account of what happened. Cameron's text read, "We have your back. You gave us the courage to speak." Amara's eyes filled with gratitude. She replied, "Thank you. Cameron, Your voice changed everything. Elsewhere, the consequences of the incident reached into the lives of those who had enforced or enabled it. Evelyn Drake found her name trending for all the wrong reasons. Her law firm received angry emails, her profile shared and criticized. She sat alone in her office, scrolling through comments, some harsh, some insightful. For the first time, she wondered if her lifelong confidence in how things worked had blinded her to the cost of her privilege. Rebecca Walsh, the flight attendant, spent the afternoon in the employee lounge, head in her hands. Lucas Barnett fielded calls from upper management, each conversation more tense than the last. Both wondered if a single moment, one decision, one polite push could truly change the course of their careers. In Atlas Wing's boardroom, Richard Carter prepared for the most critical meeting of his tenure. His executive team, usually composed and sharp, looked shaken. Richard began, "We are not here to discuss damage control. We are here to decide what kind of company we want to be. We have been handed an opportunity painful. Yes, but also necessary. Our ethics partner is demanding transparency. Our customers are demanding justice. If we fail, we lose more than revenue. We lose our right to serve the public." The team sat in silence, the gravity of the moment clear. For the first time, the room felt united, not just in fear, but in the understanding that real change might cost them, but silence would cost them more. As the sun set, Amara's team sent out the official statement to news outlets and partners today. Equitas Solutions has initiated a formal ethics audit of Atlas Wings Airlines, following the removal of our founder, Amara Fields, from her assigned seat due to what we believe was discriminatory decision-making. Our audit will examine loyalty policies, passenger treatment, and staff conduct to ensure no one is denied dignity in the name of tradition or convenience. We invite other companies to join us in raising the standard. The statement spread quickly. Hashtags surged anew. Airline workers from other companies reached out privately, sharing their own stories and calling for similar audits. That night, Amara found herself unable to sleep. She sat by her window, the city's lights flickering far below, and allowed herself to feel the mix of pride, sorrow, and hope. She realized she had become a symbol, but she also remained a person, full of doubts and scars. Her phone lit up with a message from her daughter. "You did good, Mom. I'm proud of you." Tears rolled down Amara's cheeks, silent but cleansing. She texted back, "I'm proud of you too. We keep going." And as the city settled into its nighttime hum, Amara promised herself that she would not just demand accountability, she would insist on it, for everyone who ever wondered if they were enough. By the time the next morning arrived, Amara Fields awoke to a world transformed by the night's events. Her phone was heavy with notifications, some from news outlets requesting interviews, others from supporters, and a handful from detractors who questioned her motives. She scrolled through the messages, feeling both seen and exposed. The weight of being a symbol pressed against her chest, but underneath it all was a deep, steady determination. She opened an email from Leah Park. Leah had compiled a digest of overnight developments. The ethics audit had officially commenced. Atlas Wings executives had sent word that all requested data would be turned over within 48 hours. The hashtag Wow Raise the Standard was now trending alongside Wow Justice for Amara. Several national advocacy organizations had issued statements supporting the audit and calling for broader reform. Amara replied with a short note, "Thank you for holding this line with me. Let's keep the message focused on solutions." After showering and dressing in comfortable clothes, Amara found herself pacing her suite, rehearsing lines for a video statement. She knew how quickly stories could twist, how outrage could be co-opted, and how easily a powerful moment could be reduced to a passing headline. Jada Matthews called on video, her familiar face bringing a sense of home to the morning. "We're ready to record whenever you are," Jada said. "Just remember you don't have to be perfect. Just be real." Amara sat on the edge of the bed, holding her phone. For a moment, she let herself feel small, almost like the little girl who once watched her mother face down a school principal over an unfair detention. She remembered the look of quiet dignity on her mother's face, the way she had spoken with calm certainty. Now, Amara pressed record. Her voice was gentle, her words measured. "This story is not just about me. It's about every person who's ever been asked to move, to yield, to make themselves smaller so someone else can feel bigger. I was removed from my seat, not for breaking any rules, but for refusing to surrender my place to tradition and comfort. My hope is that we can create a system where dignity is not up for debate, where every passenger, every employee, every human is treated as if they belong because they do." She paused, searching for the next line. "I do not want vengeance. I want a new standard, and I know we can build it together." She sent the video to Leah, Jada, and Michael with a simple message: "Use this as you see fit." The rest of the day was a blur of interviews and meetings. Amara spoke to 2 major newspapers and recorded a segment for a national morning show. Each time, she returned to the same idea structure over outrage, healing over humiliation. She refused to take the bait when asked about personal anger or resentment. She redirected every question back to systems, accountability, and the need for genuine reform. Meanwhile, at Atlas Wing's headquarters, the company was in the throes of self-examination. The audit teams, one internal, one from Equitas Solutions, began the painstaking process of reviewing records. They combed through seating assignments, loyalty program logs, incident reports, and employee training materials. The scope was massive, but the board had little choice. Public pressure had forced their hand. Evelyn Drake, whose name had dominated discussion threads the day before, was placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of the investigation. The law firm she worked for issued a statement: "We do not condone discrimination in any form and will cooperate fully with all reviews." For the first time, Evelyn was forced to confront the uncomfortable reality that her assumptions about entitlement and belonging might have blinded her to the harm she caused. Rebecca Walsh and Lucas Barnett were also suspended from duty. Both were offered counseling and invited to participate in a restorative justice workshop led by Equitas Solutions. The goal, Amar insisted, was not just to punish, but to teach, to create a possibility for learning and growth. Inside the airline, a shift began to take root. Employees started talking openly about the events of the past day. Some were defensive, some relieved, some anxious about the changes to come. But a majority admitted, often in whispers and quiet conversations, that they had seen or experienced similar moments, where bias crept in through policy or tradition. Later that afternoon, Richard Carter convened a town hall meeting for Atlas Wing staff. He stood on the stage, looking weary but resolute. "We have failed to live up to our own values." He began, "We owe more than apologies. We owe a commitment to be better. That starts now." He announced that all staff, from the boardroom to the baggage handlers, would undergo a new ethics and inclusion training program developed in partnership with Equitas Solutions. More than that, he pledged that the company would publish a public report on the findings of the audit, regardless of the outcome. The announcement made headlines. Commentators called it bold. Critics wondered if it was enough. Supporters noted that it was more than most companies dared to do. As Amara watched the news unfold from her laptop, she felt a strange blend of pride and anxiety. Change, she knew, was slow and imperfect. There would be resistance, there would be setbacks, and there would be moments where it felt easier to let the old ways return. But the first crack had appeared. Light was coming through. That evening, Amara called her daughter before bedtime. She listened as her daughter described her day at school, the excitement of friends and teachers who had seen Amara on TV. "Are you okay?" Mom, her daughter asked. Amara smiled softly, tears stinging her eyes. "I am okay. I am tired, but I am proud of what we're doing. Sometimes the right thing is the hardest thing, but it's always worth it." Her daughter was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I told my teacher you were a hero." Amara laughed through her tears. "I'm not a hero. I just didn't move." As the call ended, Amara felt her resolve settle deeper inside her. She was not seeking applause or revenge. She was building something lasting, a standard that could not be quietly rolled back, a promise that could not be broken by convenience. And as the city lights flickered outside her window, Amara whispered to herself, "Let this be the beginning, not the end." As the week unfolded, Amara Fields found herself swept into a tide she could not have predicted. News cycles that usually pivoted in a day lingered over her story, not just for its drama, but for what it symbolized: a reckoning, a national mirror held up to power and procedure. Atlas Wings had entered a rare moment of transparency. Employees across the company gathered in break rooms and conference halls for the first round of restorative justice workshops. Amara and her team at Equitas Solutions worked closely with airline trainers, helping to design modules that did not just cover compliance, but invited honest self-reflection. On a Tuesday afternoon, Amara stood at the front of a modest conference room in Chicago, facing a group of flight attendants, pilots, and managers. Some eyed her with suspicion, some with curiosity, a few with open respect. She spoke quietly, letting her words linger. "I know what it's like to be tired of these conversations, to want things to move on. But moving on too quickly is what keeps patterns in place. We cannot fix what we will not face." A young flight attendant named Maribel raised her hand. "What if we try, but we mess up? What if we say the wrong thing?" Amara smiled. "Then you apologize. You learn. You do better. Accountability is not a punishment. It's a promise to try again, this time with your eyes open." Around the city, similar sessions were underway. Lucas Barnett and Rebecca Walsh sat in the front row of their group, shoulders tense, eyes lowered. In the weeks since the incident, both had begun to reckon with their roles. Lucas, who had always prided himself on following protocol, now questioned whether those protocols protected fairness or just comfort. Rebecca found herself replaying the moment she accepted Evelyn's silent cue, realizing how easy it had been to choose convenience over courage. Evelyn Drake, under investigation and without her former title, spent her days in solitude. For the first time in years, she sat alone with her thoughts instead of a packed calendar. She watched coverage of the audit on television, unable to look away. Sometimes she scrolled through angry messages, sometimes through thoughtful ones, most often through silence. One morning, she drafted a letter. It took hours to shape the words. To Amara Fields, "You may never forgive me. I am not sure I deserve it. I acted out of habit, privilege, and a belief that tradition was the same as right. I am sorry for my part in what happened. I am learning, and I will not forget. Evelyn." She did not send it yet, but writing it made her tremble. Inside Atlas Wings, The audit results began to emerge. Michael Avery led the Equitas team through patterns of data, uncovering subtle but pervasive bias. Black and brown passengers were disproportionately reassigned from premium seats, often for operational needs. Loyalty upgrades sometimes went to frequent flyers with less seniority than those like Amara. The numbers did not lie. Richard Carter, sitting with his board, read the preliminary report in silence. We can either deny this and lose everything, or we can face it and rebuild. He said. The board agreed. Publicly, Atlas Wings pledged to make the audit results available in full, a radical act for an industry built on secrecy and image. Reporters called the move unprecedented. Other airlines began to inquire about partnerships with Equitas, hoping to avoid a similar scandal. Advocates hailed Amara's steadfastness. Critics still accused her of seeking attention, but their voices faded against the clear evidence of change. Late one night, Amara received a video message from Cameron Brooks. In the clip, Cameron sat at his kitchen table. I used to think it was enough to be polite, to not make waves. But you taught me that quiet can be complicity. I want you to know I have joined a community group for fair travel. I am speaking up. You gave me the courage to do that. Amara replied, her own voice thick with emotion. Thank you for standing with me. We build the new standard together. As the days went by, Amara's inbox filled with similar stories. A baggage handler wrote about challenging a supervisor's unfair remarks. A pilot shared a moment where he intervened for a nervous young traveler of color. A retired employee admitted that he had once been part of the problem, but now wanted to be part of the solution. Amara saved every message. She created a folder called Mirrors in the Sky. It was a phrase her mother used, reminding her that what we see in the world often reflects what we allow inside ourselves. The day came when Atlas Wings formally announced the results of the audit. Richard Carter and Amara stood side by side at a press conference. Cameras flashed. Reporters asked pointed questions, and for a moment Amara wondered if the world would listen. Richard spoke first. We have failed to protect the dignity of every passenger. We have failed to honor the spirit of fairness that our industry is built upon. Today, we accept the findings of the audit and commit to every recommendation. Amara followed, her voice calm and resolute. Justice is not about blame. It is about truth, about building new standards where everyone belongs. Atlas Wings has chosen accountability. I hope others will do the same. When the event ended, Amara felt the press of exhaustion and possibility. She stood at the edge of the room as employees lined up to thank her, to ask questions, to apologize. Some brought stories of their own pain. Some brought hope. All brought honesty. Before leaving, Amara walked through the terminal one last time. She watched passengers, crew, and staff, each part of a living system that was beginning to see itself anew. She paused by a window, looking out at the runway, remembering her walk down the aisle and the voices that had spoken up, quietly at first, and then louder. She smiled to herself, feeling the wind shift. Mirrors in the sky, she thought. Maybe now, more of us would dare to look. The month that followed the press conference moved quickly. Yet for Amara Fields, every day felt like stepping into a new world, one she had fought for, one she never expected to see so clearly reflected back. The Equitas Solutions Audit was published in full, accompanied by a letter signed jointly by Amara and Richard Carter. The document made headlines across business news, advocacy channels, and even travel magazines. Atlas Wings, it announced, would suspend first-class operations for 48 hours for mandatory staff training and unprecedented reset. Amara watched from her office as social media responded with a mix of skepticism and applause. Will it really change anything? Some asked, others wrote, about time an airline stopped everything to learn how to serve. For Amara, the question was not whether it was enough, but whether it was a beginning. The training sessions were rigorous, not for optics, but for genuine growth. Amara herself led several workshops via video, sharing her own story, but more often listening to the voices of others. Employees spoke up about old habits, about moments they wished they had done better, about fears and hopes for the future. One flight attendant in the Dallas session confessed, "For years, I just did what I was told, even when it didn't feel right. After your story, I started asking, is this fair?" It's a small question, but it changes everything. Lucas Barnett, once simply a by-the-book supervisor, became a leader in the new employee peer network. He often quoted Amar in team huddles, "Accountability is not a threat. It's a sign that we all matter." Rebecca Walsh returned to work after counseling, this time assigned to help lead workshops for new hires, a role she grew into with both humility and care. Even Evelyn Drake, after much reflection and a public apology, moved into pro bono legal advocacy, helping travelers whose complaints might once have been ignored. She finally sent her letter to Amara, and to her surprise, Amara replied simply, "Thank you. Growth matters more than guilt." Cameron Brooks continued to organize passengers' voices, starting a network that advocated for fair travel everywhere. Sophie Tran and Henry Lowell, once only silent witnesses, became regular contributors to Equitas's new advisory panel, their perspectives now valued and sought. Atlas Wing's public changes rippled across the industry. Rival airlines announced their own reviews and reforms. The Department of Transportation issued new guidelines based on the Equitas audit. Training programs modeled on Amara's workshops began appearing at hotels, conference centers, even city agencies. For Amara, these were victories, but not the kind that called for a spotlight. She declined most interview requests, preferring to spend her evenings at home. Sometimes, she caught her daughter reading through emails sent from people around the world. "You showed them how to listen." "Mom," her daughter said one night, pride in her voice. But the story that truly stayed with Amara was not on TV or social media. It came in a handwritten letter from a retired flight attendant in Florida. The woman wrote, "I never thought I'd live to see the day when silence was not the safest choice. Thank you for teaching us to use our voices, even when they shake." One crisp Friday morning, Amara was invited back to the airport, not as a passenger, but as an honored guest. Atlas Wings had decided to mark the end of their 2-day training pause with a quiet ceremony. Employees gathered at Gate 14 with no media, just a sense of community and purpose. Richard Carter gave a brief, honest speech. "We are still learning, but for the first time, we are learning together." Amara Fields, thank you for giving us the courage to face ourselves. As the ceremony ended, Amara was asked to board the first resumed flight, a gesture loaded with symbolism. She accepted, walking down the jet bridge not with fear or anger, but with the peace that comes from being seen and respected. The new crew greeted her warmly. Rebecca, now back in uniform, met Amara's eyes with genuine gratitude. "Welcome aboard, Miss Fields," she said. "Your seat is ready." As Amara settled into 1A, she looked around the cabin and saw not just new faces, but a new energy. Gone was the brittle sense of hierarchy, the nervous glances. In their place was a sense of openness, a willingness to see each other. As the plane taxied toward the runway, Cameron Brooks passed by on his way to his seat further back. He stopped and smiled. "Feels different, doesn't it?" Amara nodded. a gentle pride rising in her chest. It does. It feels possible. During the flight, she watched the cabin crew work small gestures, respectful words, eyes that actually saw. She heard laughter from the galley, the soft exchange of stories, a ripple of hope. It wasn't perfection, but it was a start. After landing, as passengers gathered their things, a young man paused beside Amara. "Thank you," he whispered. "I never thought it could change, but you proved it could." Amara smiled. "We all did," she answered. Outside the terminal, the autumn air was brisk. Amara stood for a moment, letting the sun warm her face, breathing in the possibility of what could come next. She knew there would be other flights, other challenges, other moments where someone would be told quietly or bluntly that they did not belong. But she also knew that the standard had shifted, just enough that no one would forget how it happened. Dignity was no longer a favor. It was a right, and she had helped the world remember. Before heading home, Amara sent one last message to her team. Let's keep raising the standard. The work is never done, but it's worth doing. As she walked toward the parking lot, her steps felt lighter than they had in months. The sky overhead was open, clear, and full of promise, the kind that lingers long after the headlines fade, the kind that cannot be taken by anyone else. This was the standard that remained. Sometimes, justice doesn't look like a headline or a courtroom victory. It looks like a single seat quietly reclaimed, a policy rewritten, a company forced to see itself in the mirror. Today, we followed Amara Fields through humiliation, courage, and transformation, not just for herself, but for everyone ever told they don't belong. Her story reminds us that every act of quiet resistance can become a catalyst for change. It's a call to see each other with dignity, to challenge silence, and to never accept injustice as just the way things are. But this isn't just Amara's fight. It's ours. How many more seats? How many more moments will we allow to slip by before we raise the standard for everyone? If you believe in the power of stories to drive change, please like, share, and subscribe for more true stories that challenge, inspire, and unite us. Thank you for being part of this movement. We can't wait to see you in the next video.